All right, welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Dan Thompson from Waukesha PD. He has 34 years experience in law enforcement, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. He has such a powerful story of resilience and proactive wellness resources that he's incorporating within his organization. So welcome to Words of the Wise, Chief Thompson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
I'm I know I said this in the intro, but I'm really looking forward to speaking with you. And when we talked offline, the stories that you have and that you were willing to share with me honestly brought me to tears a little bit. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to come on the show today and share some of the things that you've been through within your 34-year career, but also some of the things that you've implemented as far as wellness is concerned within your organization. So thank you again for being here. For anyone who hasn't met you before, who doesn't know who you are, could you give us just a little bit of background on you, how you got started in law enforcement, and what those 34 years looked like in like a short snapshot?
My name is Dan Thompson. I've been in law enforcement for about 34 years of it. Actually, 34 years complete on May 4th. May the 4th be with you of next month. Um, I'm married, six children. My oldest is 35. My youngest is she's now 16. And I'll just tell you quickly about him. My oldest, he has cerebral palsy seizure disorders. When he's 3 weeks old, we had to read him his last rites because his seizures were so bad. And we were told since seizures so bad, he is one night away from not living. So every night is a blessing, but every morning he wakes up, he's always happy. And that is a way of God telling me that I'm a servant. And I see it in his eyes because he's always smiling. If he's always smiling, I can always be smiling. Backtracking on my career, my profession, I wanted to be in the military. That was my lifelong goal. And I had flat feet and a bad knee, so I couldn't get in the military. So I became a flatfoot for the Milwaukee Police Department of March 18th of 1991. And I can honestly say I loved my whole career. In that career, it was funny. I came up in a culture of suck it up, kid, minor flesh wound. It's just part of the job mentality. To a point when I was in field training at the Milwaukee Police Department. When I started there, we had 2,100 police officers at the time. Is my field training officer tell me you don't speak until spoken to, and you just do what you're told. Okay, got it. And then when I came off field training, I better have a newspaper for the day shift before I left my squad car. That's just the mentality. And the reason why that's so important is it, to me, it ingrained a culture of you take it in, you take your hits. You measured your resiliency just by getting up, but not by actually how you addressed the wound.
Yeah.
In fact, you tell yourself you're not wounded. It's just part of the job, is how I defined it. Now, fast forward, awesome career, got to do some amazing stuff. 2004, I'm working high intensity drug trafficking area. In that position, um, we're working this large movie type case, is a good way for me to describe it. And I never took off work because I was addicted to work. So sometimes I work at 7 days in a row, 15-hour days, and I just repeat that cycle. This particular day I wanted off. I had no reason to take off, and I never took off. I said, I'm taking off. So I go to my lieutenant. My lieutenant says, find a replacement. Jay Balchunas tells me Jay was a state police officer. I worked with him in Milwaukee in a district together for a few years before he left and started working for the state. Now we're reunited in Haida years later because he wanted to be an arson firefighter and a police officer, so he did both for them. He tells me he's got my back. That night, he gets shot 5 days later because he took my shift. Every time I talk about it, it still impacts me, but I know it now that it impacts me. And when that happened, I'm like, if I would have worked my shift, he would still be here. And I still struggle with that today. And I never went to get help. At that particular time, I knew this hurt me bad. So I went to get help. But it was one of my buddies who was on our peer support. And he told me I was fine. And I wasn't fine. But going back to that culture, like, okay, I'm going to internalize it and I'm going to move forward. Well, we had to go to his funeral. The whole hiding unit had to go to his funeral. And I was put up front. His mom approached me and goes, "Are you Dan Thompson?" I go, "Yes." She told me he was honored to take that shift. Don't take that away from him. I'm like, oh my gosh, that hit me so hard. I'm like, how can mom tell me this? And I'm carrying this guilt. I'm feeling guilty. And she tells me this. I have to do better. I got to do better for him. Um, and actually move forward. Um, and that's why I started thinking about we're not doing things right for this peer support, and I'm not doing things right for how this stuff is impacting me. So fast forward now I'm in the homicide unit, and Milwaukee was pretty busy in the homicide unit, and this is now about 2010 ish. Um, Working homicide, then 2017 I'm a lieutenant in homicide, and I'm starting to see our officers getting sent to infant deaths. Well, when I was in homicide in 2007 through 11 or 12, whatever it was, I was averaging going to 5 or 6 infant deaths a month just myself and my partner. So it was pretty extensive. And we could justify when bad people are bad people. Infants, I don't care how tough you are, that was not easy for us to justify. So now as a lieutenant, I'm like, we need to start getting help. And that's when we started getting psychological first responder services in to do debriefs with the officers, not knowing that this experience was God's way of saying that after you retire from the Milwaukee Police Department, I had no clue I was going to be a police chief. In fact, I had no intentions of ever being a police chief. Uh, when I ended up becoming a police chief on November 21 of 21, I'm a little over a year as the police chief for the city of Waukesha. On the worst day, I saw the best in my first responders. I saw the best in my community. And it was like a war zone of 73 people getting struck by this suspect. I never seen anything like that in my career. And I'll never forget, my daughter was actually supposed to be a cheerleader in it, but the coach was sick, so she didn't go. So I'm sitting at home. I'm like, the team has it. I don't need to go to the parade. And I tell my wife I'm bored. As soon as I said I get a text message, it's 1078 Salt City Assist, and from it said, shit's fired. Well, this sergeant never made mistakes like that. So me seeing that, I knew it was bad. Turn on the radio, all I'm hearing is no more ambulances and all kinds of people shot. Um, that was incredible. So I immediately go there. I see my first officer, he's pale. I go, "Are you good?" He goes, "I think so." I didn't know he just fired shots at the suspect. So he was traumatized.
Mhm.
I'm walking, I'm seeing officers. I engage a sergeant who is the son of a pastor. And I go, "Hey, are you good?" His first words was the F bomb. He never swears. His second words was, "This gets me choked up," because he says, "Chief, I'm taking a second. We talk about taking a second a year and a half before the parade when I first became chief. You never know how you impact people, right? So our words matter, how we interact with people matters. When he said that there, I'm like, wow. Because when we talk about taking a second, I always talk to the team. When someone says something to you, you want to react, take that deep breath, get yourself out of the fight mode. Don't react. Take that second deep breath and respond. And by doing that, you have better outcomes. So he tells me that as we're standing over a victim, And I remember looking at the victim and telling myself, this is not consistent with people being shot. He goes, no, Chief, it was a car.
Mm.
I'm like, wow. And all I see is, you know, people doing CPR, watching officers and citizens working together. I have a lady says, this is my mom. We end up grabbing mom, putting her in the car, and the car drives off. Fire department's conveyed approximately 20, and we in private citizens conveyed the other 50 or 40, no, it's 50 something individuals. So all the policies went out the window to do the right thing. And this is one of those where you just had to make a direction and go. And we did things right, um, with having first responders and um, chaplains in the building before any officers came off the street. Where I kind of think in my mind, where I kind of failed a little bit, is got so much tunnel vision on helping the officers that my supervisors that were there with me for 18 to 23 hours, I should have relieved some of them before, and I didn't because I got caught up in television, making sure that they were good, make sure the officers got what they needed, make sure that we had a replacement people to cover the shifts and all that, doing all that chief stuff.
Yeah.
And that story, actually 9 months after the parade, getting ready for the following year, is what really put me on a journey of really learning about what is post-traumatic growth, what is resiliency, what does that mean to help an agency move forward uh, in times of crisis and tragedy. And then here's where my journey became where I gotta be honest with you, I was a hypocrite because I was so busy helping others, where multiple people did interventions on me and said, who are you talking to? And I'd always avoid. And then when I ended up talking to a chaplain 9 months later, I ended up talking about infant death from 30 years ago that I never talked about. And then I ended up talking about an officer that my partners and I, we ended up watching him. He was shot in District 5, and we were a couple blocks away. And we go and we watch him pass away by a tree. I totally blocked that out of my head for years, and all this stuff is coming out. And then I'm learning the biological effects. I gained 50 plus pounds after that parade, not knowing all the biological responses to trauma. And I never would use the word trauma. I always say as part of the job. So I know you told me to give a brief. I just gave you a whole bunch in a short period of time.
Well, I appreciate it. And you had me tearing up within the first like 10 seconds of you talking. And, you know, I said this to you before, but I appreciate your vulnerability and you being willing to share these things. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place is to be able to do this, to have these conversations that are real, and to talk about the things that impact you. And I want to circle back a little bit and kind of dissect some of the things that you were saying that kind of stuck out to me, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, please.
Um, One, I thought that what you said about your son was beautiful. Being able to find joy in maybe something that I can only imagine would be so challenging or scary, where you don't know what's going to happen, but you can find the joy in him smiling and that bringing you joy and learning how to push through that with a positive mindset. And I thought that that was really beautiful. Um, the conversation that we had about um, the line of duty death and the guilt that you carried, it sounds to me, and the thing that's so hard about things that we go through in life, those challenges prepare you for what's next, right? And the idea is that you learn from them, and for you it seems like in such a tragic time that you carried around with you for so long, and all the guilt that you carried along with you for so long also gave you new purpose and new perspective on wellness. And that allowed you to determine how you want to lead and do better for other people moving forward. And I think that there's beauty in that. I don't know if you agree, but when you're talking to me about it, I'm like, wow, like that tragic event has now allowed you, to take care of people in a way that maybe wasn't there before, or maybe you wouldn't have known to do before.
I, I agree 100%. In fact, I would never thought of myself as someone talking about uh, being a champion of resiliency and post-traumatic growth. I didn't know post-traumatic growth was until after the parade.
Yeah.
And I think there's a mindset that goes with this. First is like realizing that something hurt you. Second is, am I going to stay in this mode of hurt? Or what proactive measures am I going to do to get out of it? And the third one is actually using that experience to help others. And in helping others, I'm helping myself. And that whole process, that whole journey, I really is recent for me. It's more like 23, 24. So I really elevated that whole process of recognizing I need to be habitual in being proactive on being resilient and seeing the good in life and knowing that there's bad. And then seeing the good, I think, is a really good mindset. And when we're talking about my son, I want to say this is I joined this profession because I know God called me to do it. And I wanted to serve others. But Danny, my son, the special guy, he also is showing me that I'm a servant. So when I'm taking care of him, I bathe him, wash him, and stuff every day. That's validating my why. That makes any sense. And that helps me with the resiliency part of it as well, is because I know my why. And then becoming vulnerable and talking about this really, I'm a better chief now today. I'm a better father today. I'm a better husband today. I'm a better human being by being human, if that makes any sense. And that is so
100%.
180 of our profession, and especially 180 of being a chief. And the reason why I say that is I always tell the team, you never be down the the B word, complain down. You only complain up. Well, when you're at the top, who do you complain to? So you internalize all that. You internalize all that. And now I found very good coping mechanisms. I'm back to working out again. I'm eating. I never knew that sleep was really critical in wellness. I never knew how my stomach is associated with um, anxiety and other things.
Mhm.
I never knew these things. So if I'm like, if I don't know this after 34 years, we need to start really messaging this out in these podcasts and us speaking out and talking to other champions that are going to come into this most noblest profession. You're going to see trauma. There's no way around it. But we can be proactive in how we react to it and respond to it. And responding to trauma is important. Is we got to acknowledge it. And if that means seeking professional help, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, my daughter, who's 16, she has ADHD and high anxiety. When I see her interact with mom and she terrorized mom, well, I go and I try and be a policeman with her, and it did not work. When I started taking a second with her, that's when I really honed in on taking a second. It was not so much at work, it was more so with my daughter. Our relationship is so much better now because when she has her moments, I don't hit her then. I let her go through a moment. I show empathy, show love by taking a second. Then when she's down, we have the conversation and we're so much better. But when I take her to the doctor, this is about 6 months after the parade. Uh, I'm taking her to her therapist, and therapist pulls me aside and says, "Hey, I just want you to know that you have anxiety." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You got it." I had to actually process that and think back, like, holy smokes, I think he's right. I would never ever acknowledge that. So I had to go and be proactive in dealing with my anxiety. And this is me leading people, uh, being a leader in the community, dealing with anxiety, but I'm being proactive with it. So when I feel the triggers, I practice gratitude. I'm very intentional with my breathing. I'll do the 2 second. I'll do the box breathing,
Mhm.
and I'm very deliberate with those. In driving, I'll actually squeeze and release the steering wheel,
Yeah.
but I'm being proactive in those things, and in it's helped. And now there's less ripple effect of at home. I'm more engaged at home instead of crashing, if that makes any sense.
100%. And one of the things that you were saying is choosing to see the good. And you said positive mindset and gratitude. And that's a practice. I think that that's learned behavior because it is easier sometimes to see the bad or to get stuck in a down instead of saying, hey, there are bad things, but how can we focus on gratitude and the good things and having that positive mindset? And I had another coach, chief, say, it's actually called PMA. I don't know if you've heard this before, but positive mental attitude. And I know you guys love your acronyms, so maybe
I
it's an
love it. I'm
easy,
using it.
easy way to remember PMA, positive mental attitude. I can't take credit for that. That's Chief Borges.
I
But
love it.
I think it's that learned behavior of how can you wake up every day and try to find gratitude, try to find the good in things because there's always going to be bad, but there's also good. And when you can attach to the good, it's going to set you up for success in the future. Um, I want to talk a little bit because I know that everything that you went through in your career has brought you to this point where now you're focusing on proactive wellness. You're focusing on resiliency plans. There's things that we've talked about offline that I would really love for you to share. You've started incorporating some of this training into your agency with the second, which I think is genius. I call it the power of the pause, but it's the same thing of like take a moment, choose how you want to respond instead of being immediate reactive to things because we know that that sometimes doesn't turn out the best. We're like,
Yeah.
quick to jump in. But I would like to talk about something that you and I talked about offline before you were at this point of proactive wellness and gratitude and the things that you're doing now. And one of the things too, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but the squeezing of the steering wheel is PMR. And it's like a pressure point, right? So you're trying to bring yourself to the present moment, and then releasing, right? So it's another mindfulness strategy for anyone who doesn't know. It's actually like something that works really really well. But before that, and you said this earlier, that you were addicted to your job. And the way that you processed things was to not process them at all and to keep working. Can you talk about that? Because I think that a lot of people can relate. And I hear this a lot where it's like just throw yourself into the job. And I would love to hear how you did that and maybe how you were able to kind of pull yourself out of that work addiction to be able to then process the things.
So multiple, there's one intervention I'll talk about, but so coming in through my profession, working gang squad, working homicide, working these different things in Milwaukee, and then now being a police chief, when things would impact me, how I deal with it, like be like, oh, this kind of sucks. So I'd work more and put myself right back in it. And the reason being is because if I worked more when I went home, I didn't want to crash like that at home and be vulnerable at home. So I was home less because I was working more. So who suffered? My family suffered. And this is for years they suffered. But my wife went to that emotional survival with Dr. Gilmartin
Yeah.
training,
Mhm.
and she weaponized that on me. So how she weaponized that is before I would walk into the door, I actually walk into the door and she'd be like, "What do you want for dinner?" And I'd be like, "I don't care. How's your day?" "Fine." she would force me to say what I wanted for dinner. So now when I drive home, I put my audiobook on. I am deliberate on identifying what I want for dinner. And I'll come home now and she'll be like, "What do you want for dinner?" And I'll then just throw an example. I'll say chicken. She goes, "Nope, we're having spaghetti." But she's forcing me to get out of the OODA loop, out of the hypervigilance state, and be in the engaged state at home. And I can't have my phone anywhere near the dinner table, and I can still see going on vacations or I don't have my phone near me. I have to be honest with you, my balance is better, but I still have that addiction issue, worrying about my crew and am I missing something on my phone? You have to separate. One thing I learned through my journey on post-traumatic growth, which is 180 of my belief system, is I was always brought up to care for others. But in order for me to care for others, I have to care for myself. That doesn't mean just working out and exercising. That means actually exercising my mind mentally as well. That means for me going to church. That means for me actually having quiet time. That means for me doing things that I used to do, that I love to do, that I do again, uh, and being deliberate in those things. And it's paying off. I'm the best I've ever been. I'm not as quick as I used to be, but happy wise, I mean, it's incredible. This journey is incredible. Even with all the hurt, all those life's crucibles, I'm a stronger person today. Um, and then I'm blessed for everything that I've experienced in life.
And I think too, it's everything that you're saying to me is one, having, you said intention, like you're mindful of how you are when you're not at work. And I think that the word mindfulness is thrown out a lot and people don't understand what that means. And when you're mindful and you're present and you're doing things that don't have anything to do with the job, right? You're being you, not cop you, but
Right.
you're able to engage with your family, go to church, find hobbies or enjoyment outside of the job where you can be present. That takes you out of that anxiety state. It takes you out of the worry state because you're not worrying about the future or what might happen. You're not thinking about the past. You're like you said, you're mindful and you're present in the moment, but you're also finding joy outside of the job and you're being able to be human. And you said that earlier, like we're human, and I think that in order for you to have to understand that you have human qualities, you have to do like quote unquote like human things, and find that like normal. And I put that in quotes for anyone who's not watching the video, but finding a sense of normal outside of the career.
And that is a really important statement because I'll tell you this, I worked 23 hours straight after that raid attack. And I came home and my daughter was 12 or 13, whatever she was at the time. And she saw me first time ever, I think, being out of control, where I was just completely beat up. And she's never seen me like that. So she told me to toughen up. When she told me that, I wanted to put the stranglehold on her. At first, I took that second, I realized she never seen me out of control. That was her anxiety of saying, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with my dad?"
Mm.
That was a good lesson for me as well because we do impact them. And when I do feel tired, I have to tell myself, no, you need to be engaged. Um, who cares that they don't care? In fact, it's awesome that they don't care what I wear on my shoulder. They just want husband, they just want dad. That is good for me. So that gets me out of being tired actually. And then we go do our things and it's good. And then that actually makes me better at work is that work-life balance,
Yep.
which I never had for my whole career. And coming from Milwaukee, it was came from a if you let it, that job would consume you if you let it. It would just eat you up if you let it. So I'm very deliberate with that as well. this is another new term for me is putting boundaries up and knowing what those boundaries are. That was never a thing for me. But
Yeah,
now I can say I'm at my limit. I gotta do self-care now to get myself recalibrated.
and what a powerful position to be in now to be able to do that. I think anyone listening can relate to the struggle of having boundaries and work-life balance, and you have extremely stressful careers and you have a lot of hats that you're wearing, especially if you also have a family. And how do you find that balance? But once you can come to the point where you have this as a priority, where your wellness is a priority to you, your work life balance, your home life, that is a priority to you. I think that that makes it easier to have those boundaries when you can have that mindset of like, this is a non negotiable for me. Like I have to take care of myself if I'm going to be able to take care of others and do my job effectively and be the best husband and be the best father that I possibly can be. I've got to take care of myself. And that's a boundary.
That is, and I appreciate you saying that because and that puts validation back to me on saying continue that journey because I have better days than other days, right?
Mhm.
On doing that, but the more I practice it, the more resilient I
Yeah,
am,
100%.
and the better responses I give to my team members that I'm leading and working with because they get a
100%.
better version of me.
Right. There are a lot of things I still want to touch on, but there's one
Sure.
thing that you said earlier, and I think this is a good segue into it. You posed the question of like, don't complain down, complain up. And once you're in this executive position, once you're the chief, it's like, where do you go? Because there's nowhere to go up. And I know you talked about Wisconsin having an executive peer support and something that you guys are trying to create so that you guys are, able to speak to each other about it. Can you maybe give a little bit of insight into that initiative and maybe where you're at or what the goals are
Yes.
with that?
So I'm part of our Wisconsin Chiefs Association, and I'm talking to another member. His name is Mike Sassi. He's retired from the state police, and I'm telling him how this impacted me. And him and another chief start talking about, well, why don't we create this executive peer support team? Because they're also part of the Wisconsin State uh, duty death response peer support team. So they're talking about, I'm like, oh, cool, you guys are going to create this. Well, then they started talking to me, and I found myself getting more and more involved in this executive peer support to a point now where I'm a champion of it. And within a year, we had almost 1,000 hits, so to speak, conversations just in the state of supervisors that are talking about things that are bothering them.
Mhm.
That is excellent. And one of the things that we did too is we created our own testimonials so a person can actually listen to a testimonial and say, I relate to this person, and we can set up the phone call and let them have a conversation. If it's more than that, we have psychological clinicians that will help support us. But I'm not satisfied with just Wisconsin. I think this needs to be a national thing, especially with the mass violence being a part of that. This is a club I never wanted to be in, and I can honestly say that feeling the guilt of that's why I think I gained part of that 50 pounds was some of that was guilt of officers in the community. Like this happened in my watch. Educating the other chiefs and supervisors that are going through what we went through, instead of them going through a raw, let's be proactive and get them the support that they need so they can be better supporters of their team members. And not just team members at work, but team members at home.
Yeah.
Um, so now that's my big, something I'm really passionate about. And then God kind of hooked us up, or you and I are talking about it today, right? Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I think that that's something that should be nationwide. And when you're talking about it, I feel like how powerful is that, that as leaders, you recognize that not only do you need support, because you do, you're humans too, and you have a lot going on just like anybody else, and you need support as well. But to have the awareness, the proactiveness, the vulnerability to speak to each other about this, that to me is progress, which is incredible. You know, you talked about the generation that you came from where it's like you don't talk about it, suck it up, like rub dirt on it, and how much that's changing in such a positive direction brings me hope and excitement. But beyond that, I just know that it's going to save lives. I know it. I know that by you guys, and I'm going to get emotional, by you guys having the ability to talk to each other, not only could it save one of your lives as leaders, but like you said, now you have the ability to lead better and to help the people within your organization so that they feel safe and supported and they have the resources because their leadership is providing that and prioritizing that for them. And I think that that's the snowball effect that's going to happen. And I appreciate you and your efforts in that arena because I do think it's going to save lives.
Appreciate it. And I get this from, I don't mean to call him out, Assistant Chief from Uvalde. I'm out there talking about post-traumatic growth, and he was talking about the buddy system. And I'm like, I love it. So he would actually have a buddy at the end of their shift. They talk, how's your day? Uh, things go good. How did things went bad? And they force themselves to talk about it. I really like having the buddy system as one part of it, but also having a code word for a text um, where you get a text from somebody and whatever the code word is, I need 5 minutes or um, have a code blue, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
When you receive that text, you know, hey, this person wants to talk. And call them. I just had a couple days ago one of my close friends who I actually look up to as a mentor is telling me the Reaper is here. I'm feeling it. And we talked through it for almost 2 hours on the phone. Um, and that's what you needed to do. In those states, I just have to listen. It's not a matter of giving advice. It's just listening and letting the person talk. And when they want to hear a response, they'll let me know. But by building up that network, because people would be lying. I'm talking about chiefs, I'm talking about police officers. If we haven't thought about the Reaper at one point,
Mm.
even if it's for a second or two, but that scares me. And I've lost too many friends who ended their lives by suicide. And I just told you a couple weeks ago, a shocker. We know each other for a whole lifetime, and he retires on a January, and the anniversary of his dad's death. He ended his life. I had no idea that that was going to happen. But that validates our why we do what we do, why you and I are talking, why you're passionate about this, and why I'm passionate about it. Those things are should be motivators for us that, hey, we're moving in the right direction, but we have a long ways to go,
Yeah.
and we got to stay in the fight. And people who think that maybe tomorrow or they think that I don't need it, I'll call them on it. Um, I was a tough guy. I still think I am. In fact, talking about the tough guy thing, last time I talked with Heather, one of my, we had mandatory neck up checkups after the parade. We made it mandatory because some people said he didn't need it. So we had to say, well, you say you don't need it, but your brother and sister next to you might need it. We're saying the same thing, so we're all going to do it. So when I did my second one, I'm telling Heather, I'm like, why do I have tears that still come down my eyes? And I'm fine. She's like, all that negative stuff is starting to come out of your body now. It's finding its way out. I'm like, wow. Wow. So we gotta put this message out and have conversations and start talking about resiliency in the front end, but then being engaged with each other and having the buddies and having those conversations. But we need chiefs to talk to each other and not be afraid to be vulnerable and saying that this hurt. And it could be as simple as a discipline. It doesn't have to be this big traumatic thing, or it could be something going on at home. Whatever it is, talk about it. When you contain it, there's a difference about putting boundaries up and compartmentalizing things. There's a difference. And we got to understand what the difference is. Where I put everything in this little genie thing and thought it went away, it didn't. When I actually started embracing it and recognizing it, and then actually using that as a catalyst to be a stronger person with boundaries, I feel really good.
Yeah, it's like freedom. I mean, I had experience myself with childhood trauma and like you said, shoving everything down and throwing away the key and hoping it goes away, and it doesn't go away. And there's a time in all of our lives where we are forced to deal with those things. And it's amazing to me still, because it feels like a journey. It's not like you talk about it one time and you're automatically just free from everything. There's a lot to process and unpack in there. And it's amazing to me still, like some of the things that come up sometimes, like you said, you're like, why is this happening now? Why is there a tear coming down my face now? And it's like, well, now you're processing that piece of it. And it is an ongoing thing. And I do think that there's so much power in conversation, even if it's just us having a conversation to make wellness more normal, then there's power in that, and then beyond that, individuals feeling, you know, safe and secure to be able to talk about these things. And I love that you guys make it mandatory for everybody so that it's not like, four people are walking into the office and everyone else is watching them do it. It's like, no, everyone from the top down, everyone is going to be doing this together as a team, no matter what. I love that you're doing that. I want to talk about, because the words that came up a lot, and I love this word, and I think it's the hardest word when it comes to wellness, proactive. And I know that, you're talking about resiliency and wellness and being more proactive. Obviously, the things that you went through within your career kind of shaped that of like, okay, now I know that we need these things. And it sounded to me during the parade like you had already implemented some of these things. The second was already a training that you had that your officers were able to refer back to in the moment. I have two questions for you. One, what does resiliency mean to you? And how are you proactively implementing some of these resiliency plans and resources within your organization now?
Answer first question, what does resiliency mean to me? Resiliency means to me of that we're going to get hit and knocked down, but how we respond is not just by getting back up, but actually moving forward from it. To me, that's resiliency. It's not just getting back up. It's actually saying, you know what, I got knocked down. This is not going to define me. It's, in fact, it's going to refine me. And I'm going to move forward with this. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to be stronger from it. And that takes intentions. You have to intentionally be able to do that. And also takes vulnerability. You got to be vulnerable and say, wow, this really hurt the heck out of me.
Mm.
And not be afraid. Well, I still struggle with this, but better uh, being okay to cry. It's okay to show emotions. And sometimes people respond to trauma differently. Don't judge somebody because they're not crying, right? So the second part of that is after the parade, we ended up getting Valor coming in and talking about resiliency. I got another doctor, Dr. Mitch Javidi, who talked extensively about breathing and he talked about fragility. And I loved how he talked about developing anti-fragility. In other words, developing techniques when you're triggered to get you back in that positive state. And to me, that was practicing gratitude. I'm a big believer in practicing gratitude. Even in my breathing now, in my inhales, I'll actually think of something that I'm grateful for. And then my exhales. Um, and by doing that, my mindset now is positive. I think you're a stronger person when you're a positive person. And I actually think it's easy to be negative. I think that's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not into the easy, I'm into doing the right thing type of person. So that motivates me. But being deliberate and talking to, going to roll calls and talking. Another word that we don't say, we talk about being proactive, the word love. So we will go through a door and even take a bullet for each other in a heartbeat. To me, that's a demonstration of love. But to say the word that we love each other, holy smokes, that's a totally different animal, right? So I'm telling you, don't have to like say the words love each other, but you can say, hey, I care about you. How you doing?
Yeah.
That's another way of saying I love you. Um, but it's not wrong for you to say that I love you too. Hey, and I don't mean it in the wrong way. I mean it in a completely um, loving my brother and sister type way. It's okay to say that we love each other. I tell my team all the time I love them all the time. You go on roll call, say, what are you grateful for? They'd be rolling their eyes, and but now you're building habits where they're actually being now. I'd always tell the team too is always anticipate the ask. When you teach your team members to anticipate what you expect of them, they're actually learning your role and they're becoming better. So when you exemplify those things by anticipating the ask, and now you're talking about what are you grateful for, you're teaching them to anticipate, you asking that question, that's a win.
Yeah.
When I do my dad jokes, I do that intentional. So when I send out an email, I don't have a dad joke on there now. They're like, what's wrong with the chief? When we do promotions and the mayor comes in and the family there is there with the people that are getting promoted, we actually have a dad joke competition now, and they're bad. But by doing that, that to me is awesome. Where now I actually have the mayor that's in this thing doing positivity, and when people are smiling, we can actually smile and do hard things. We can do that. It's okay. You don't have to be miserable in this profession. We can see a lot of stuff, but we can actually have a lot of fun and be positive while doing it.
And to me, it sounds like you're quite literally weaving wellness into the fabric of what you do and your organization, where if like everywhere you turn around, there's something positive and you're talking about things and you're joking and you have these consistencies within wellness, it's now creating the fabric of who you are as an organization. And like you said, younger officers are learning that from an early age, and then that's going to impact how they lead. And it's a snowball effect, right? So now, as you go on, you're creating new leaders that also care and prioritize that culture.
And so I learned this is impact opportunities. So every contact that we have, every problem that we need to solve are opportunities. And we have a choice of how we're going to engage in those opportunities. But if we are positive, we are taking a second, and we actually are invested in showing that we're engaged, much better outcomes. And then do a little dad joke in between there. It, that seals the deal.
I love it.
Um,
At the end of this, I'm gonna have to have you do a really good dad joke. So I'll plant that seed now.
all right. Outstanding. I got a couple.
I wanted to go back to because you told me about this before, and you kind of showed me what that looked like. Your resiliency plans that you have younger officers do. What does that look like?
So I'll first tell you, International Chiefs of Police Association asked me to start talking to other agencies that are involved in trauma about, and I worked with some really smart therapists who we're talking about post-traumatic growth, and that's where I really started learning about post-traumatic growth. And in there, they're talking about developing a resiliency plan. So I'm like, if I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down and I started writing. My first one was physical well-being, and I started talking about my daily exercise routines. Going back to golfing, I'm terrible at golfing, but just hitting that ball and being outside, you never know. I never knew how difficult it was to hit a dang golf ball, but I love it. I just love being outside, and it's not the score doesn't matter. It's just having fun and being out there, stretching. Then second one was mental and emotional wellness. Taking a second, practicing gratitude. Uh, I listen to audiobooks, but the audiobooks I listen to are like so far from uh, the truth. It's like sci-fi,
Mm-hmm.
unrealistic stuff that just gets me into and mindful leadership, being mindful of how I'm feeling and recognizing how I'm feeling, and then being proactive on countering it. If I'm feeling like angry, I'm asking myself why, and I'm practicing gratitude, thinking about positive things and countering it, and I'm doing much better that way. Social and spiritual, going to church, being engaged with my family. One, I still have a lot of work to do, and that's a work-life balance, but I'm doing better with that. More able now to put my phone down. I'm more able now, since I have such a good team, to actually disengage myself from work. They'll call me when I need me. When they need me, they'll call me when they need me. That was a journey for me. Is what I learned is being a good leader. Sometimes you might feel helpless. And the reason why is because when you are engaged in the front end and they're doing everything they need to do, don't get in their way. I learned not to interject myself when I don't need to. And that's part of the wellness too, is it's okay. They'll call me when they need me. And that was a big one for me. And then continue to learn, continue to be engaged and share with others, and building a network of relationships. You and I are now friends today. We didn't know each other before that. I think that's awesome stuff, right? But then sharing that with all of your team members and being vulnerable. What I mean by like keeping it real is what I call it. Good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. Don't shun away from the truth. Let's talk about it. And if you can carry a gun, you should be able to say why you're not feeling happy about something, right? So let's talk about it.
And is that something like that resiliency plan? Is that something that you encourage others in your organization to do as well? Is it something that you share with them? What does that look like?
Yes. So now I shared it with our peer support team. I'm working with them on pushing out for the rest of the department to include. We're looking at some biometric type applications where the officer can, like, I have a smartwatch and I was cutting down bushes, and my watch is telling me you need to stop and call 911 because my heart rate was going nuts. And I laughed at it and I went back to work, and then I did it again. But I'm thinking about that when my watch was going off with the biometrics, having officers being allowed to, like, hey, your heart rate is up. Um,
Mhm.
Putting in their sleep cycles, putting in their steps, putting in their workout goals. And then also I want them to have a gratitude challenge in the application. And I want the officer, they don't have to, but I like for them to give permissions to our CAD, computer aided dispatch system, to allow, if they get exposed to a certain amount of things, the CAD can actually send an alert like, hey, are you good? Do you need to talk to peer support? Are you meeting your goals? How are you doing? And the app will actually say you did 75% in this goal. And if you meet your goal, it'll give you balloons and say, great job, and set up another goal type of thing. So these are things that we're doing in the resiliency app. I want part of that. I want them to create their own resiliency plan in that biometric application, and then challenge yourself to see if they're meeting those goals.
I love that. I think that's really cool. I appreciate your time so much, and I know that we're kind of getting to the end of this, but I wanted to ask you one final question, then I'll give you the floor if there's anything that we missed. What words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career when it comes to wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier in your career that would have helped you, or maybe something that you've done that's really helped you. What words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier?
Always, always remember your day one. Remember your why. What got you into this profession? Because when I struggle really bad, I go back to why did I want to do this? And I tell myself I want to do something greater than myself. I know this is what God wanted me to do. I love doing what I do. I remember the excitement of why I joined the profession, and that carries me through. And I learned in cycles. So like from 6 to 8 years, I went through almost like a burnout cycle, and I'd have to go through ask myself my why period, and I'd be good. And then 15 to 17, 18 years, went through it again. Same thing about 25, and then I just hit it again recently, but it's a much shorter window because I was able to answer my why really quickly. Um, but that does happen. But that would be my advice: is always remember why you joined on, and then the next thing is make it a habit to be positive and see the good. Make it a habit because that mind shift will carry you through everything. Because you won't focus on things you have no control over. You actually focus on things you can influence, and that makes the job in this profession so much more enjoyable. Because you're gonna see bad, you're gonna see terrible things, but in those terrible things, you never know how you impact and save lives and help other people. Some of the worst things I had family members come to me and say, thank you. Didn't even had a clue that I impacted them, but thank you for what you did on this day. That makes it worth it. It's not what you wear on your shoulder that makes it worth it. It's not uh, the authority of your rank, but it's your character that carries the day. But really, what makes my day is when someone comes to me and tells me a story how I impacted them where I didn't have a clue. That's to me is so every day is an opportunity for us to impact people in a positive way, not just out in the community, but also internally with each other. So that'd be my advice. And the last thing I'll say is, what does a police officer and a DJ have in common?
I don't know. What?
They both tell drunk people to put their hands up. See the power of a joke and smiling, right?
I hope someone's watching the video right now. That was awesome. The little
Oh, it's stupid. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. You got to do it. Yep.
I appreciate your time so much. I really do. That this has been an amazing episode, one of my favorite. It's been awesome. I do want to just kind of end on one last thing. Um, and I don't know if you're willing to kind of share this, but we talked a lot about post-traumatic growth. And I think it's a reminder to everyone that there is growth and learning on the other side of traumatic incidences and stressful times in your life. You came up on the 20-year anniversary of your colleague, your friend, dying in the line of duty because he took your shift. And we talked about this earlier. And you talked a little bit about what happened recently, and you had the
Yeah.
opportunity to speak. Can you share that? Because I think that this is so powerful and important for people to understand.
Yeah. So we were celebrating Police Memorial Week. And on Police Memorial Week in 2024, I was asked to speak at Jay Balchunas' 20th year uh, anniversary of his death at the cemetery where he was buried at for a ceremony. And I was scared because I knew his whole family was going to be there. So I ended up writing a speech, and I ended up going, I'm talking, I ended up bawling, which, um, you have that macho thing, like you're not supposed to cry and all that, but the emotions just flooded out of my body, and it spoke. And the family was so awesome with me. That brought closure. It took 20 years, but I actually could feel myself. I had closure. So that whole period of time, even though I'm going through my journey post-traumatic growth, um, and I'm not letting it define me, but I'm actually using that to be a better human being. That closure was so helpful for me because I deep down, I needed to go back to them and tell them that, again, for some reason, I had to tell them I'm sorry. And they refused to hear that. They were more on the, you're doing great things. and Jay appreciates it, and he's up in heaven, and he loves you for it. God loves you for it. I'm like, wow, okay, I'm good. And I'm grateful for that experience. Grateful for all of it.
Yeah, and you said to me too, like you never know the weight you're carrying until you let it go.
That,
And having that
yeah.
like moment of closure and like feeling lighter after it, even after 20 years, I thought you saying that, like we never know the weight we carry until we let it go, is such a powerful thing that I wanted to make sure that we had in this episode.
So that is so true. Is when I was finished, I just felt like 1,000 pounds after 20 years was lifted off my shoulders. So I'm like, even though I said I was good, I was still carrying that 1,000 pounds uh, on my shoulders. And when it went away, I was like, wow. So this is what it feels like when I'm not carrying
Hmm.
this weight. So now I can actually take that space, so to speak, and do something good with it for me. And like then when I say for me, again, that's my challenge of self-care challenge that I have for myself.
And I think that, to kind of wrap things up and tie a little bow on it, for anyone who's listening, I think that testament that we just went over shows that it's never too late. It's never too late to find that freedom, to heal, to learn, to grow. And, the first step is kind of the awareness. And then it's like, where do you go from there? And it's never too late for you to do that. And there is growth and freedom on the other side. And there are resources out there for you. And there are daily practices that you can do to practice a positive mindset and gratitude and be present and talk about things and seek out resources that are available to you. And there is growth and freedom on the other side of it.
Sometimes it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we struggle with that. It's okay. It's a marathon. It's gonna take time. And then when it happens, you'll be like, wow, this is flipping amazing. But stay in the fight, stay in that positive journey, and you're gonna get triggered. It could be a smell, it could be something you see, it could be someone watching on TV. Don't shun away from it. Embrace it. Ask yourself your why. Do those positive things that you're talking about and being mindful in the moment. And that marathon is going to carry you there. It's going to get you there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much. This has been truly amazing. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. You take care.
You too.